The train screeched to a halt in the distance, leaving behind only a faint metallic echo that dissolved into the night. I stepped down onto the dimly lit platform, the cold steel of the rails shimmering faintly under the moonlight. It was a routine I had followed countless times before: get off the late-night train, walk along the railway tracks, and reach home in about 25 to 27 minutes. 10 minutes of balancing footsteps on the rough stones that lined the track, and then another 15 to 17 minutes along the narrow dirt road that wound into my neighborhood. Nothing about that night should have felt different. The path was familiar, the kind of familiarity that usually soothes the mind after a long day. But as soon as I began my walk, the silence seemed heavier, as though the very air carried a weight that pressed down on my shoulders. At first, I tried to convince myself it was the exhaustion of the day, the dull ache in my legs, or perhaps the creeping loneliness that comes from walking alone in the dead of night. Yet, only a few minutes into the walk, a sensation stirred in me, sharp, undeniable, the distinct feeling that I was not alone. The sound was subtle at first. My own footsteps crunched against gravel, but beneath that rhythm was another, fainter but steady, almost in sync with my pace. It was as if someone or something was trailing me, maintaining a careful distance of just 5 or 6 feet behind. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Slowly, I turned my head, heart pounding in my ears. Empty. The track stretched endlessly behind me, swallowed in shadows. No figure, no flicker of movement. The stillness was absolute, yet my skin prickled as though unseen eyes were crawling over me. I forced a nervous laugh under my breath, muttering, "Maybe I'm just imagining it." Trying to push down the fear, I started walking again, but the sound returned. Crunch, step, crunch, step. Each one aligned with mine, delayed only by a heartbeat, as if someone was deliberately matching me. I spun around again, nothing but the cold emptiness of night. No one. Yet my pulse refused to calm, and my throat tightened with the dread I couldn't reason away. The path ahead led past the old cremation ground, a place I'd crossed countless nights before. People in the neighborhood often told stories about it, strange tales whispered in hushed voices, but I had always laughed them off. Tonight, though, the air felt different. The shadows loomed taller, the silence louder. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my breath, and pressed forward along the path. Still, the thought gnawed at me. What if something is walking just beyond sight, close enough to be heard, but not seen? What if it's waiting for me to turn back again? Each step felt longer than the last, as if the ground itself stretched beneath my feet. My heart was no longer beating in rhythm, it was pounding like a desperate drum, echoing in my skull. The closer I drew to the cremation ground, the colder the night seemed to grow, and though I tried to steady my nerves, I knew deep down that I was walking towards something I couldn't explain, something that was already aware of me. The railway line curved ahead, and beyond it lay the edge of the neighborhood cremation ground. Even in daylight, the place carried a heaviness, an invisible veil of silence that no birdsong or human chatter dared break. At night, it was a different world altogether, an expanse of shadows, the smell of damp earth, and the faint memory of smoke that never seemed to leave. As I approached, I could see flickers of fire dancing weakly against the dark sky. My chest loosened a little when I realized what it was. A funeral pyre. A group of people was gathered there. Their silhouettes moved slowly, shadows swaying against the orange glow. Relief spread through me. At least there were humans nearby. At least I wasn't completely alone on this cursed walk. I paused for a moment, letting the sight comfort me. The footsteps I thought I had heard behind me, perhaps they had come from here. Perhaps the sound had carried through the stillness of night. It made sense. My mind was tired, paranoid. But then something caught my attention. Something small, but deeply wrong. When a body burns, the face is always covered. Wooden planks are placed across the chest, thick enough that the flames consume without revealing the features beneath. I had seen enough cremations to know this. Yet from where I stood, across the shadowy boundary of the ground, I could see the corpse's face clearly. Not a flicker, not a trick of firelight, the features were visible, pale, almost luminous against the flames. The eyes seemed shut, but the expression, there was something disturbingly conscious in it, as if the face were only pretending to rest, A chill shot down my spine. I looked around at the others, at the men tending the fire. They moved with calm indifference, not once glancing at the exposed face that burned before them. Were they blind to it? Or was I the only one who could see? I forced myself to keep walking, tearing my gaze away. My footsteps quickened, my shoulders stiff. Every fiber of me wanted to flee, but I gritted my teeth and thought, it's not my concern. It's none of my business. Just walk. Get home. Forget it. Still, the image of that face burned itself into my mind. Each time I blinked, it returned its pale skin, its strange clarity in the fire. And then another realization struck me, sudden and sharp. That cremation ground had been locked for years. No pyres had burned there for as long as I could remember. The neighbors often joked about how the dead themselves must be restless, since no new bodies were ever brought here. Yet what I had just seen was a body burning, men working silently around it, and a face watching me from the flames. The relief I had felt earlier drained away in an instant, replaced by a dread so deep, it hollowed out my chest. My legs wanted to stop, to turn around, to run, but my mind whispered with an even darker fear. What if something is waiting for me to turn back? So I kept walking, forcing myself forward, though each step seemed heavier than the last. The silence pressed closer, wrapping around me like cold fingers. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the sense that someone or something from that cremation ground had already taken notice of me, and would not let me leave so easily. I left the cremation ground behind, but the sight of that burning corpse's face clung to me like smoke. No matter how fast I walked, I couldn't shake the image, the pale skin, the unnerving stillness, the suggestion of closed eyes that might open at any second. My heart hammered louder than my footsteps, and yet I couldn't help but notice it again. The sound. Crunch. Step. Crunch. Step. My blood ran cold. The same sound I had heard earlier, footsteps trailing mine. This time, they were unmistakable, crisp against the gravel, echoing faintly in the dead silence. I froze. My body refused to obey the command to keep walking. Slowly, stiffly, I turned my head over my shoulder, and for the first time, I wasn't alone. A figure stood a few paces behind me, half in shadow, half in the dim glow of the cremation fire still flickering in the distance. My stomach twisted when I realized what it was. The corpse. The very body I had just seen burning on the pyre. It was walking. The skin glowed faintly, its outline warped by the strange shimmer of firelight clinging to it. In its hand, gripped tightly, was a piece of burning wood. The flames licked the night air, feeding on nothing, as though the fire was not consuming the wood, but instead living inside it. The figure didn't stumble like a corpse should. Its movements were deliberate, steady. Its head tilted slightly toward me, as if studying me with a curiosity that was far more terrifying than rage. I wanted to scream, but the sound lodged in my throat. My body trembled, refusing to obey, until a raw instinct surged through me. Run! I bolted forward, feet hammering against the path. The night erupted with the sound of my panicked breaths and the crunch of gravel beneath my shoes. But the footsteps behind me did not fade. They matched me, relentless, growing sharper and louder, as though the creature was closing the gap between us. I dared a glance over my shoulder. It was there, no more than a dozen steps behind, the burning stick held aloft. The flames carved strange shapes in the air as the figure moved, the light revealing glimpses of its face. And that face, God, that face was no longer closed-eyed and serene. The eyes were open now. Dark, hollow sockets glowed with a faint, unnatural fire. Its lips twisted into a half-smile, as though it relished the chase. The stick flared brighter, and before I could react, the figure hurled it straight at me. Time seemed to slow. I watched as the burning wood spun through the air, trailing sparks like dying stars. Then impact. The searing heat slammed against my back, pain lancing through me. I stumbled forward with a cry, nearly falling face first onto the ground. My shirt smoldered, the heat biting into flesh, but adrenaline drove me onward. Somehow, I forced my legs to move again, pushing past the pain. The footsteps didn't stop. The corpse was still coming, still chasing. Every part of me screamed for escape. My only thought was home. If I could just reach my house, if I could just cross that last stretch of road, maybe I could survive this night. But deep inside, a chilling certainty was growing. This thing had no intention of letting me go. My legs carried me faster than I thought possible. Every nerve in my body set ablaze by fear and pain. The burning mark on my back throbbed with every stride, a reminder that what was chasing me was no illusion. I stumbled across the last stretch of road, heart slamming so violently it felt like my chest might split open. And then my house. Relief surged through me at the sight of its shadowy outline, the familiar walls, rising like a fortress at the end of the lane. My breaths came ragged, sharp, every gulp of air scraping like broken glass down my throat. I whispered to myself, almost there, almost safe. But safety was a lie. Something in the air shifted the moment I set foot near my yard. The night itself seemed to recoil, as though darkness was being bent, reshaped by the presence that followed me. I turned, trembling, and what I saw drained the last drop of relief from my body. The corpse, but no longer the same as before. It was growing, its body stretched unnaturally, skin distorting, bones snapping and realigning in grotesque shapes. Within seconds, it towered above me. The once human figure had become monstrous, a shadow blotting out the pale moonlight. One leg planted itself across the massive tamarind tree in front of my house, the gnarled roots groaning under its weight. The other stretched impossibly far, braced against the tall palm tree that marked the corner of our yard. Its torso rose like a pillar of flesh and flame, its face looming high above, staring down with those cavernous, glowing eyes. I collapsed to my knees, my body refusing to move any further. The sheer size of it crushed me with terror. It wasn't just following me now, it was surrounding me, dwarfing the very walls of my home. The ground trembled as it leaned closer, lowering its face to mine. The air thickened with the stench of smoke and rot, the suffocating heat of burning flesh. Its grin widened, stretching far too long, splitting the face in a hideous mockery of human expression. I could feel my consciousness slipping, my vision dimming around the edges. My ears rang with a low hum, as if the world itself was about to shatter. My body swayed, unable to bear the weight of terror pressing down on it. The last thing I saw before the darkness claimed me was that face grinning, watching its burning eyes flooding my mind with a single truth: there would be no escape. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was in my own room. My bed, my walls, the faint glow of dawn peeking through the window. My body slick with sweat, lungs aching for breath. For a moment, I clung to the hope that it had all been a nightmare, a hallucination born from exhaustion and fear. But the searing pain in my back told another story. The morning light felt cruel, too bright, too ordinary, as if the world had already erased the nightmare that had crushed me only hours before. I sat on my bed, trembling, my clothes damp with sweat. My head spun with fragments of memory, running footsteps, burning wood, the monstrous figure towering over my house. At first, I tried to convince myself that it had all been a hallucination. Maybe exhaustion and fear had twisted my senses. Maybe I had fallen asleep on the train, dreamt the entire ordeal, and woken here in my room. But when I reached back, my hand froze. The skin on my back burned with pain. I pulled at my shirt, twisting to look into the small cracked mirror by the wall. And there it was. A mark, red, blistered, raw. The unmistakable imprint of fire seared into flesh. A wound shaped like the tip of burning wood. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a dream. Someone had touched me. When I told my family what had happened, they stared at me in disbelief. My words spilled out in a desperate rush. The footsteps, the cremation ground, the burning corpse, the chase, the towering figure at my door. I showed them the wound, the angry scar still smoldering on my back. Their faces turned pale, their silence louder than their doubt. By midday, curiosity and fear drove us all to the cremation ground. I needed to see proof. To find that funeral pyre still smoldering, to find the ashes, to find something that would prove I wasn't losing my mind. But when we arrived, the place was locked. The heavy wooden gates were chained shut, rust biting through iron. Dust and cobwebs clung to the hinges, untouched for months. Inside, the ground lay flat, covered in weeds and dried leaves. There was no sign of fire, no ashes, no pyre, nothing. The neighbors confirmed it. No cremation had taken place there in years. The ground was abandoned, unused. A silence fell over the group. They looked at me as uncertain, faces pale. Some whispered that perhaps I had been cursed, others that I had been chosen by something beyond our world. But no one could explain the mark on my back. No one could erase the pain that throbbed beneath my skin. That night, as I lay awake in the quiet of my room, the memory replayed again and again. The sound of footsteps, the face in the fire, the burning wood striking my flesh, and the towering figure, grinning at me with hollow, glowing eyes. I still don't know if what I saw was real or the twisted product of fear and exhaustion, but when I run my fingers across the scar on my back, when the sting of that burn flares up in the silence of the night, I know one thing with certainty. Hallucinations don't leave wounds. And some nightmares don't end when you wake up. Did you enjoy the story? Let us know in the comments. And if you liked it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Horror Dream. Want more stories like this? Subscribe to The Horror Dream, and we'll bring you more darkness, just for you. If you enjoy a little chill down your spine, stick around, like, share, and hit that subscribe button, right here on The Horror Dream. Your support keeps us going, so stay with us. Subscribe to The Horror Dream for more spine-tingling tales.